much for that warm introduction, and I'm really proud and really excited to be sat here with this panel and to be able to introduce the topic of how different clubs are approaching the challenge of building real community, real engagement with an Asian audience. And just as a little bit of personal background, I've been based in different parts of Asia, across India, mainland China, Hong Kong, and I've worked in Japan too. And so I've definitely seen very closely a lot of the efforts, good and bad, that clubs have made to build up their audience, to build that connection in Asia. And I think that it's just a really special time to speak about this topic now, especially just off the back of the real success that Hong Kong experienced with hosting the football festival during the summertime. The excitement that it brought, the sold-out tickets, people willing to pay huge amounts of money to go and see these clubs and to invest in them. And I think we also saw a lot of the power of celebrity this summer in Hong Kong as well, with obviously Ronaldo in town, with the Saudi Cup, the opening of the museum that's outside as well. And I think it's a really special moment in time where the fans in Asia really want to build that connection with these prestigious brands, with these big clubs that are based out of Europe. And so in preparation for this, I was reading a really good article that was in Campaign Asia that Mailman had written, just talking about the demographics and why it's such a powerful place to build a brand. And so obviously, half of the world's football fans are based in Asia, but also more than half of those fans are under the age of 34. So it's a young audience that are going to be around for a long time. And that's in stark contrast to Europe, where the fan profile is a little bit older. And I think there's two other really important parts as well to comment on when we think about the fan base in Asia. Number one, the obvious part, which is that it's digitally native, really invested in social media, and there's a chance to build connection online. I think the other part is that these people don't have a strong preference for clubs. They weren't brought up in generations of supporting one club in their house, and there's a chance to really win a new fan base as well. So in terms of the structure for today, what we'll go through is a little bit of what's happening today, and we've got some amazing brands and some really good viewpoints in terms of what the status quo looks like and what good looks like today. I want to touch a little bit on data, technology, and also the creative element of building brand. And then we'll just talk about some of the challenges and what it's like to build a brand in Asia at the moment as well. And we'll wrap up with a little bit of a look to the future. But with that, maybe we can start off with Luc and talk a little bit about Bayern. It's been around for a long time, especially in China. And maybe you could speak a little bit of some of the challenges of building an audience in China, your experience of doing that, and what does Bayern's operation look like today in China?
Yeah, sure. And thanks, Ewan, for the introduction. So for us, China is by far our most important market internationally. It kind of always has been, and it is, and it will definitely stay that way. And we have been present here for quite a while, right? Like we opened our office in Shanghai almost a decade ago, and we did that because we have a highly localized strategy, right? Like for us, it's really important to be present locally, to be very close to our fan base. We have a very fan-first driven approach, so to speak. So for us, it's really about to try to double down on that and be authentic and develop the community. We refer to our community as the world's biggest sports family. So I think that speaks a lot about what we're trying to do here together with our fans. You might know that FC Bayern is the biggest member-based club in the world. Actually, in terms of memberships, right? Like there's no other team that has more. We also have something called our fan clubs, where you can officially register as an official Bayern supporter within these fan clubs that are independently run, though not by us as a club, by our official members. It's separate from that. We also have over 300,000 fan club members that we actively engage with in China on a daily basis. So, it also means put a lot of effort and resources into, developing the direct connection to your fans, right? Like, and obviously, if you ask me about it's not really a con, right? Like, but it takes a lot of time, resources, and budget that you need to put behind that, right? Like, but for us, that's really important about being authentic and driving, the local engagement of our fans here in the region. And only in the second step, we then think about, okay, how can we actually commercialize that and develop that into increased revenues? right? Because obviously, I'm not gonna lie, that is important for the club as well, for sure. But that has never been like our clear focus, as some other teams might present themselves quite aggressively on the sales side in Asia as well. That's definitely not our approach, right? Like, it's about locally, authentically developing the audience, and then in the next steps, identifying potential for commercialization and looking after revenues.
And I think, Shannon, there's a lot of like overlaps, if I understand correctly, between the way that the Bayern have approached and really had like that grassroots approach. And the nuance with Tottenham is this deep relationship, deep partnership with AIA. So maybe you could compare and contrast a little bit about what Luc's gone through there, about how Bayern have approached, and then how Tottenham have gone about building out, you know, their presence and their audience in Asia.
Yeah, I think for me, it's definitely about the power of the partnership. AIA and Tottenham Hotspur have been together since 2013. And the beauty of the partnership and what we do is that we have coaches from Hong Kong, we have coaches based in Hong Kong from Tottenham Hotspur who've all had a journey with Tottenham Hotspur Football Club. So myself as a player, I was there as a player for 8 years. So I understand the club, the philosophy, the DNA and the core roots of the club. And what we wanted to do is align with our partnership with AIA and really deliver that healthier, longer, better lives message to people on the grass, but doing that through football. And for us, you know, although based in Hong Kong, we travel to the 18 markets of AIA. So we have a captive audience with customers of AIA and obviously our fan base in all of the 18 markets in Asia. And for us, the uniqueness of what we do is that we are on the grass. We are with our participants, our customers and our fans. We don't franchise our model out. Every single one of the coaches that we've got, and we're a smaller team, but we are touch point every week, every weekend. And for us, it's about really getting, you know, children into football, giving them the opportunity and the experience to play football, to understand what the Tottenham Hotspur football philosophy looks like, and to teach them. And in addition to that, it's about supporting coaches in these regions. You know, coming from the UK, we have got an absolutely fantastic football foundation. Our governing bodies are excellent. And for us, it's about delivering that message of football, teaching young people, and also for us about trying to develop coaches in the markets as well and giving the information and knowledge. In terms of our fan base, sort of similar to Bayern, we've got our official supporters clubs, and it's really important for us that we touch base with them and, you know, we organise things with them and make sure that they are, you know, they're heard within the markets. And for us, it's a great way for us to engage with our fans. And for Tottenham Hotspur, having done, you know, with 5 pre-season tours here in Asia, and I think that impact of being within the markets and localising that is amazing. You know, AIA is the biggest, you know, insurance company in Asia, and their presence and their brand, we collectively as a group with AIA and Tottenham Hotspur, we are delivering what we say we're going to do with healthier, longer, better lives, as well as that real, unique, on-the-ground football partnership.
And maybe for both of you, just to kind of as an add-on question, how different is that approach, say, for Bayern, for Tottenham, the one that's happening in Asia, versus what would happen back in Germany, back in England? Is it significantly different? Does it borrow a lot from what's happening in those places? The contrast would be interesting.
Okay.
So I think it essentially it's pretty different in terms of, okay, in Germany, we don't need to build our brand, right? Like, or extend our reach. It's simply there. It's just organic, and you either love or hate FC Bayern if you're living in Germany or in that area, right? Like, so we don't have to actively push that. We're in the media every day on a constant basis, sometimes positively, sometimes negatively, but there's no bad press in that situation. We're constantly top of minds of all people in Germany, if they want it or not, right? Like, you can't avoid it. And of course, that's the huge difference for us internationally, that we actively try to work on that, to create a narrative that people want to hear about or want to talk about, so it's actively covered, right? Like, so I think that's the key differentiation, that we definitely need to do more, because again, also, like, nobody's really waiting for us, right? Like, we need to actively create that locally in our focus markets, and that's why I think it's so important for us to localize content, to localize products, so to really meet the the fans there where they are and speak their local language and try to meet them where they are and where they come from. So I think that's the key for us internationally.
I think sort of being a London club, you know, in the English Premier League, it's, you know, one of the best, in fact, you know, in my opinion, the best league in the world for football. And I think that level of football, obviously, you know, there's lots of different people, lots of different fans. I see some Arsenal shirts in the audience today as well. But we've got that level of, you know, there's lots of different clubs fighting for fan base. And I think for us, the beauty of what we do and the authenticity is that we are on the grass. Since 2016, when we had coaches placed in Hong Kong, we've touched over 160,000 participants. So we've touched base with them. We've delivered football camps and clinics in all of our 18 markets in Asia. So for us, it's about using the Tottenham Hotspur philosophy and DNA partnered with AIA and the Healthier, Longer, Better Lives brand promise to really deliver what we say we're going to deliver. And I think in terms of what we do and the uniqueness of what we do, we want to bring that, make sure that our markets across Asia know that they've got a little bit of Tottenham Hotspur, but official Tottenham Hotspur in the markets.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that they're just really interesting because when you think about these huge brands and Bayern, Tottenham, they are massive companies, massive brands. You think a lot about social media campaigns, a lot of money getting pumped into marketing, but the hands-on nature of all of it, and it's actually really like grassroots, and it's really real, right? It's like very much like you're going out there, you're meeting people and doing it like one by one. I think it's a really interesting aspect that maybe people aren't as aware of, and what it takes to build a brand in Asia today. Maybe from a completely different viewpoint of building a following in Asia, we could speak about Red Bull. And obviously you've recently acquired a club in Japan, and I think people would really like to know a little bit more about that process. How do you, decide that Japan's the place that it should be, it's not Korea or anywhere else? How do you find the right club? What does the process look like of actually going through and acquiring a club as this big, huge conglomerate as well? So I think people would love to hear a bit more about that.
Absolutely, yeah. So for us, obviously, the approach to market is totally different in comparison to Bayern or Dortmund, where the core product itself is in Europe, and we, as a global company with the multi-club network that we have, we were always looking into Asia over the last years or decades, actually. So just for the sake of transparency, we own and operate clubs in Germany, Brazil and US, but Asia was always a bit of a blank page for us. And when I joined, I was lucky enough that my boss gave me the task of find something in Asia. So that was the briefing, and we looked at it from various different levels. Obviously, the sporting topic is the most important. Commercially, yes, that's also a part to ultimately also support the beverage, and so this aspect was also taken into consideration. So we looked at what are the markets from a sportive perspective, creating talent, where do we find the highest level, and there Japan and Korea stuck out. Commercially, there are various different options in Asia, obviously, which are from a beverage perspective super interesting, but again, comparing the two, then Japan stuck out, and we looked at it from strategically went for the big cities, and then Tokyo was the most obvious choice, and there within that or the vicinity of Tokyo, there are a few clubs which came to our interest, and then ultimately the process of acquiring a team in Japan is quite complex, because you have to have obviously the buy-in from the local community, from the league, from the existing. You have to find a club who wants to sell, or like an ownership who wants to sell, and NTT, who remains our dearest partner, was very open for those conversations because they've been struggling on the pitch for a couple of years actually. So they just got then relegated to J3 at the time with Omiya Agia, the club they called, and we stepped in and supported firstly on a strategic level, and then we came to a conclusion that it makes actually more sense if we take the ownership, And over 1.5 years, 2 years time of negotiating with those relevant parties that I just mentioned, we then finally took over at the beginning of this year in January. So far, knocking on wood, looking good for promotion right now to do basically a straight run from J3 to J1. But again, it's going to be a long process, and it's absolutely amazing to build a football club up from scratch, basically. And that that luxury that we have as Red Bull is to really bring in new processes, new ideas, new capacities that maybe are not used so far in the Japanese infrastructure.
And obviously, like, Japan is traditionally conservative and traditional. That's probably like the two words that would come to mind often when you think about Japan. And obviously, like, the multi-club ownership model is not really in line with that. So what was the reaction from other clubs around? Was it positively received? Was there an instant fan base there for you? Or is it something you've had to also go out and build the community and to engage with people on?
I mean, the good thing in Japan in that sense is that it's known that corporates own teams. So that was, for example, in Leipzig, and still is in Leipzig, a big topic from opponent fans not liking the idea of Red Bull. And I was expecting something similar in Japan, but actually positively surprised that the fans, our own fans' reaction was amazing. So we tripled in jersey sales, we doubled in memberships, and so all those commercial KPIs went through the roof, and we didn't even plan for that. And in that sense, it was very, very positively perceived. But again, that was also not something that happened overnight. Yeah, so we took a lot of conversations, particularly towards the league and towards to the local stakeholders, to the community, and pre-discussed a lot of things that we are trying to build, the capacities that we are bringing, with some sort of compromise that we also have to bring in our, let's say, new name, new colors, and those ideas that maybe don't really, if you think about it from in the first instance, it could be also perceived negatively, but community-wise and communication-wise, it was well organized, I would say.
And then maybe to go over to Echo. So obviously Dentsu, huge agency, and it was worked with all kinds of different sporting brands and a lot of soccer brands from Europe. And you've been around the industry for a long time. And again, my sense is that we maybe had like a quieter period, 2020 for the past, maybe for the first 4 years of the decade, and then we're seeing this kind of return to Asia, if you like, and a lot of interest and a lot of focus put on it. And I'm really keen to understand a bit more about how's this gone in the past sort of 5 to 10 years? How's it changed and how's it evolved?
I think that from a humble perspective, from the agency point, I did see that 10 years ago, some of the football clubs, they come to Asia as tourists. So they have a couple of summer stops, they do some sales meetings, and they send the global executive to come to the press event, and then they leave. But back then, it was a good time. Money was easy, and a lot of brands, big or small, they jump in. And some of them call it the golden rush of the Asia commercialization of football sports. However, I felt that a lot of partners back then, they were not ready. So that's why that we saw a lot of collapse of partnerships, didn't wait until the contract finished, and the struggle was on both sides. And a lot of people now consider Asia much harder, and they feel that it's much harder to connect with the brands and much harder to have commercial sponsorships. But from my perspective, I think that it's actually a reconciliation, because the noises are fading and the true players are staying. They're the ones, they're the bigger brands, or the brands have a real global ambitions. So we see it from our own hands, because take the example, we help NFL to activate in, we help Toyota to activate NFL, we help Oppo to stay their journey with the Champions League, and we help Marina Bay Sands from Singapore to enter into F1. And those plays and partnerships are not just opportunistic plays, and they are very deliberate approach to connect themselves with premium rights holders. And I think that those progression that we see are not declines, but real progressions and probably a good signals for the football industry here. But one thing I must say that I do think that the industry is realizing that Asia is not just a stop for tourings. It is a soil to incubate. Because look at the panelists here. We have Red Bull and Philipp, who is rooted in Japan. We have Bayern continue to develop the fan culture in China, in Thailand, in Korea, and we have Shannon really activating with the mass communities from the true partnership with AIAs. So I think the signal from the stage is very real that don't just come to Asia as a tourist, but come as residents and really to cultivate the soils, and you are really harvest something that's more sustainable and the long-term loyalties, which eventually can convert into commercial results.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you see, I think, like the authenticity, the hands-on, like the commitment to the markets, I think is something that's like really clear throughout like all the initial like answers. Is there anything on top of that that you think is really important? Again, thinking of Dentsu and storytelling, the way that campaigns are run, is there something that you see that some clubs do really well and other clubs maybe don't do so well?
I think a lot of my club friends are really getting it now, is like what Luc also said. Asia is very different. We used to have a term called TIC, which is this is China. Like, for example, a lot of Western sponsors, they are so used to sponsorships. They know that when they put $1 into buying the sponsorship, they need to put $3 in activations. So a lot of clubs, they come to Asia, they thought that's what the brands will do, but that's not true. And a lot of brands, they need a lot of guidance and hand holdings, and they also need the commitments and effort and patience from the rights holders. So it's not to say that when you come to Asia, you have to lose, but change the mentality by what you offer and put in the price tag and debate it into what you can help the brands to achieve. So I think that's more and more rights holders, football clubs, are really doing it well, slowly.
Yeah. And I think that's what's really inspiring, actually, for all the the conversation that we've had, is how humble these mega brands have to be. And in Europe, in Germany, like in Bavaria, like Munich's top dog, and everyone knows who they are. But then coming into Asia and being so humble in the approach, I think that's a really interesting part of it, and then something maybe not everybody is aware of as well. So, unless anybody's got any more comment on that, I actually wanted to return to Red Bull, and we wanted to sort of like compare and contrast, because I think that one of the really obvious like themes that has come up, it's come up today already, but just in general when we come to marketing and building audience, is around analytics and data, and that's where Meltwater comes from as well. It's about like measuring your audience, the growth, the engagement, and having this set of numbers and a dashboard. And I think Red Bull's just famous for being really good at using data to drive decisions and to drive the way that they run the company, obviously, especially around marketing. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about how that's worked for you so far in Japan, and maybe contrast that compared to Europe and how it's different.
Yeah, and now we are certainly in the process because we, as I said in the beginning, we just took over the club in January. So for us, there's a mountain waiting for us on work, and for example, we didn't really have proper Wi-Fi in the stadium or at the clubhouse. So that's something then approaching then the club staff to then talk about the level of data, and employing a data scientist is so far out of their mind that it's frankly irresponsible to say, okay, our expectation from Red Bull is that we have to have X, Y, Z process by the end of the year. What we do and what we are trying to show the existing staff also of the club is that with the capacities that Red Bull brings and the network and particularly the comparison to other clubs, you can basically compare through data your own performance. Yeah? So for example, when we did all the testing with the players, all the medical data, you can basically compare yourself as a under 16 to the under 16s of Leipzig or to Bragantino and see where you end up. So I think that is then seeing is believing. Yeah. So then they feel also the players, the staff sees, oh, hang on, there are certain measures that we maybe didn't take in the past, but now with those resources that we have, we are more accepting the fact that maybe in the beginning it's a bit of a pain to feed those systems, yeah. So feed medical data, feed nutrition data, because ultimately that's the biggest challenge, right? So you can implement the best possible systems in the world with the biggest resources that, granted, Red Bull certainly has, and bringing those to Japan. But if you don't have the right resources on the human resource side to feed those systems, it's worthless. Yeah. So we want to, in that particular case, we want to take it step by step. Implement Wi-Fi first, which is a tick, but also other systems, and particularly on the medical side, we're seeing some progress already, preventing injuries and overcoming, so to say, the existing infrastructure. The J League is doing an amazing job actually providing certain data points as well. So we're not really literally starting from scratch. So the progress is there, but also in my role, I try to be also the responsible guy, saying, guys, from the global HQ, Jürgen Klopp, Mario Gomez, who are super into data and super driven by progress, that we have to scale down some of the things as well, not too overwhelming the existing organization. Yeah.
That makes sense. It's a bit of a sidebar of the conversation, but we were speaking earlier about like the physical stadium and the experience that might actually have an impact. So when you're speaking about your Wi-Fi-less stadium, I was just thinking about the impact that visiting Tottenham Stadium can have, as an example. Maybe you could speak, Shannon, a little bit about the incredible experience that stadium has, and all the effort that's gone in to make it an amazing tourist destination. So when somebody flies in from Shanghai and visits for the first time, that it has like a lasting impact.
Yeah, I think that's key, and I speak for the stadium because it is an experience, as you said. I think the little details that have been thought about with the stadium, in terms of they've put a Formula One track in the car park, so to give people that experience of it's not just a football stadium now, you're not just going to watch a football stadium, you've also got, down to the audio, and, the people that have designed it have just given people such an experience that when you're in the stadium, it feels so loud, the atmosphere is there. You've also got, the NFL is the residency is in the UK, is at the Tottenham Hotspur football stadium, the revolving pitches, to make sure that those little details, when you talk about it as well, about those little details and those data, those points of data that people can analyse, it's so important when you're looking at driving football and you're driving that, and it's the comparison that you can have. And I think going back to the stadium, you've got the NFL there. We've had many concerts there, throughout the summer and over the last couple of summers. And I think in terms of sort of commercial revenue, you're looking at a football club, you're looking at an experience, you're looking at all of those different things that Tottenham Hotspur do bring to North London. You can climb up it and do an abseil down. So you've sort of got everything for everyone there, from sort of adults, children, and it makes me feel really proud to be part of the club. And I think the levels and we try to be innovative in everything that we do, and we really try to go to places and be sort of trailblazing in what we do, so other clubs can look and say that's a great idea, we'd love to do that. Even in terms of sort of the training centre as well that we have for the players, male and female. This isn't just about the male game, it's also about how they're developing the female game as well, which I think is super important. And I think listening to sort of everybody on the panel is so insightful to hear sort of what everyone's doing, sort of in the respective clubs, and yeah, just fantastic.
Cool. Maybe to balance the data, right, and to go back to Echo. So like Dentsu's like famous for being a creative powerhouse, telling good stories, and obviously helping brands to tell those stories as well. What do you think that like European soccer brands can learn from that art of storytelling, having amazing campaigns? What are the lessons that can be learnt in there to help them build a really engaged fan base and to build an audience in Asia?
I think speaking about creativities, I'm learning every day in Dentsu as well. And last year, I actually had a very humbling experience to be one of the jurors for Cannes Lions. And I remember that just in a few months, I was literally going through the applications of hundreds of applications from the global entries. But one of the things I do want to share here, which is very encouraging for the football world, is that I think out of 700 cases, more than 50% were entries related to football sponsorships. And the Grand Prix winners in Cannes for the sports category last year and both this year were football related. So I think that, like everybody knows from the marketing industry, that Cannes Lions is the pinnacle of the industry, and it just simply tells football is not just a decoration of creativities when it comes to brands, but truly the X factors for the creative pyramid. One of the things that I do wanna share is not a lessons or really like a very refreshing reminder for myself as well, is that the brand association itself doesn't win. Because when a sponsorship can succeed only when the brand's touch with the fan culture truly, and also to create a social impact. But at the same time, some of our rights holder fans, they're still selling the very conventional stuff. For example, tickets and brand exposures, and maybe a short TVC shootings with the players. And we have saw a lot of really creative ideas being shut down and rejected by rights holders or football clubs simply just because it was never been done before, or it have an overlap with the rivals, which was really a pity because we may lose the chance of making a history in the creative industry. And I always like to share this case because it really struck me last year when I was judging, which is the case of Adidas with the Boston Marathon, where the brand managed to convince the rights holder to put the bib number 321 to dedicate to all the runners with Down syndrome. Because trisomy 21, it is the symptom, the genetic condition that causes the syndromes. And when that activation took place, it really went viral and started from Boston Marathon. A total of 300 marathons joined the match. And many of them are not even sponsored by Adidas. So a simple sponsorship rights entitlement become a global phenomenon of inclusion and the humanities. So that is always so encouraging, and I share with a lot of my football fans as well, to share that maybe the next time when the sponsors or the agencies come to you with a crazy bold idea, just try to be a little bit more open and maybe try to help to sell internally, because it could be the breakthrough of football marketing. So yeah, that's something I really feel that in the past 2 years, ever since I joined Dentsu, I'm personally being embraced as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that it's such an important point that probably whatever happened in the past is not how the future will look. And that's not how the new audiences will be won. And you talked earlier about the golden rush, and I was around in China during that time, and every brand was showing up and opening a Weibo account, and that was it. But not just for China, but all of Asia, the fan has evolved and the consumer has evolved, and they're way more sophisticated, and they expect so much more. So whatever has been done before probably is not the route to success. Exactly. This time around. And I thought about it because I was at Pacific Place, which for those of you that don't know is a fancy mall in Hong Kong. And Liverpool have got a pop-up shop. But this is a really prestigious mall, and this pop-up shop, it looks like a boardroom, it's all mahogany, it's really fancy. And I never would associate Liverpool with really fancy, mahogany, I grew up in the UK, I know what Liverpool's really like. But they're doing something really different, which is trying to reposition their brand that they wouldn't have done previously. And I think it's just really interesting, the innovation that will be required to win the modern fan as well.
Exactly.
To go back to Munich, though, Luc, thinking about winning the fans as well, obviously the Bundesliga is an amazing league, but it isn't quite the EPL in terms of the coverage or being on in all the bars all over Asia every Friday, Saturday night. And of course, there's not throwing any shade on some very popular players that have played for Bayern, but maybe not any sort of grade A celebrity players either. And so how has Bayern managed to achieve what's quite an incredible thing from going from being a fairly quiet club on the global scene to becoming one of the big sort of top 5-10 clubs that you would think about? How do you think that Bayern managed to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that question hurts me a little bit because growing up as a kid of the Bundesliga, in my opinion, it is the best league in the world, right? It has the best stadiums, it has the best audiences, very affordable ticket pricing. That is a key differentiation, I would say. So we don't only have tourists and business people, right? We have families and true fan bases in the stadium. So that's I think really, really important still. And yeah, so in my opinion, it's still a great league, but of course you're right? Like it is also a strategic disadvantage to be part of it, and mainly because of two reasons. One is revenue, right? Like if you look at the media revenue that the Premier League teams receive, it's a different ballpark, right? Like we as top of the Bundesliga receive roughly the same amount that the last team in the Premier League gets, right? Like so obviously that makes it harder to compete. And the other major reason that we are it's a big challenge for us is the influx of investors in the EPL that we don't have in Germany, with some exemptions, but at least for FC Bayern, we're not in that position, right? Like so, of course, that is a strategic disadvantage. Mostly, we're still able to overcome that by working harder on the commercial side and being, top notch there. Like if you look at the UEFA 5-year ranking, we're still number 2, I believe, and no EPL team is ahead of us, right? Like so, it's only Real Madrid at number 1. But the second big disadvantage for us, and mostly in the international space, is that in terms of brand and in terms of reach, that is quite tricky for us, because as you mentioned, right, like I walked around last night a little bit, every bar you see EPL here at night and not the Bundesliga. So of course that is an issue for us. And I mean, for the league, it's not easy, right? Like there's always a trade-off between revenue for the teams and reach towards reaching a bigger audience. So that means for us, we need to be more active, right? Like we need to do more than these other teams. And I think that's why we have been always like at the forefront of this international development of European clubs, right? Like we were the first team that opened an international office. To this day, we have the most international teams in different markets, because we are aware that we need to be more active to be locally relevant, right? Like so that's very, very important for us in terms of being able to grow, right? And I agree what Shannon mentioned earlier, right? Like in terms of youth football, of course grassroots is important, but also it is like the most logical, authentic product that we can offer as a club in international markets, right? Like, and really can help the development of the sport in the different parts of the world. And I think that what we take a lot of pride in is being able to contribute that, right? And we do it in many parts of the world. We have grassroots, we have different camps, but we have created something that I believe is really, really unique in the football world, which is called the FC Bayern Pathway, which offers a credible way for these talents from a grassroots perspective to hopefully one day become a professional footballer. And that is through different kinds of tournaments. It's through local academies that are really, really important. And yeah, at the top of this pyramid, there's something called the FC Bayern World Squad that is pretty much a global selection squad of players, under 19 players, where anyone can apply from all over the world. And we actually went to China with that team this summer, and it was a great success. We saw a lot of talent there, and hope that many of these kids are going to make it as a professional footballer, because of course if we can create these kind of local heroes by our own, that is really a key differentiator that will be really, really helpful for us in the future, right? So that's why we try to be even more active on that end, while on top of all the other things that our teams are already working on.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that the model that Bayern has put together, is this a way for other clubs, maybe other clubs who are, I'm from Scotland, we're a smaller league, there's some pretty big clubs there, or you think about the Netherlands, Portugal, could other clubs use this model, do you think, to develop their brand internationally and use that as a way to grow themselves?
I don't think there's one model there to follow for every team. I think everyone has to identify what works for them and what's their specific brand position, and how to tap into then the local audience and localize it, right? Like, because the localization aspect is such an important factor of it. But again, I think from my perspective, youth football is for every football club kind of the most logical starting point where you can try to build a local audience with, and I believe anyone can follow with that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I've noticed that our moderator is now back on the stage, so I assume that our time is coming to a reasonable close. Maybe I could pass it to Philipp for some closing thoughts around future, and then we have time. It'd be interesting to hear from everybody. Yep. But the future of this, like I said, like my sense is that we're at some kind of like crossroads and we're going down a different path than maybe where we've gone before, with like Asian fans supporting European clubs and the connection. What do you think the future might look like for this, and how, you know, if we were doing this in 5 years' time, what do you think might have changed again?
Yeah, I mean, just to replicate actually what Eko said, I think the most important part is that we are Western brands change a little bit their mindsets of you know, internationalization. Yeah, so I think the coming on tour for a few days, popping in and out, and then taking the money and leave, I think that's not the way to go. And I think a lot of instances in the past show that that makes it even harder for the brands who have offices here, who commit to certain countries, and I think that sustainability in that sense, staying and really investing, in our case literally investing, but also other brands who invest resources, ideas, whether through supporting youth in the markets or other various topics that were mentioned. I think that is the most important, because that is from an HQ perspective, like this understanding has to be everywhere, that, you know, mistakes being here or being made here in Asia are very, very badly perceived, and more worse perceived than in other parts of the world.
Cool. Do we still have time, or are we wrapping up now? Wrap up? Okay. Okay, well, thank you very much for the panel. I think, again, like some really good themes, but like mainly around authenticity and innovation, something kind of between the two, right? Traditional hands-on, getting on the pitch and getting on the grass, playing football and giving kids opportunity and getting introduced to the brands. But then at the same time, it's innovation and doing something different than what has gone before in order to build on what is a really exciting opportunity for European brands. Cool. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our panel, Luc